Hey everybody, welcome to TYT Nation interviews with me. I've got a special guest today. He is running in the 1st Congressional District in Ohio and also ran for the DNC chairmanship back in 2017. Everybody, please welcome Sam Ronan to the show. Hey Sam, it's good to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And it's been a long time coming to be on the Young Turks politics. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. I've been following your career with some interest, especially when you were running against all the different people running for the DNC chair, and it's actually really sad what happened. We've got Tom Perez, so
I can't agree more. And I don't even mean it in a negative light. When I was running for the DNC chair, I said that of all the candidates that were running for office or for that particular position, we could have chosen any single one of them and we would have had marginal improvement. But if we had stuck with Tom Perez, we would put the final nail in the coffin in terms of trust and faith in the party. And as we have seen, that particular prophecy has come to pass.
Yeah, there is very, very little trust in the DNC. I have none. Even though and it, a little controversial here, I guess, because some of my viewers agree, some of my viewers disagree. But I'm of the, hey, let's infiltrate and take over the Democratic Party. And some of them, rightly so, and I understand completely, where they're like, no, it's too corrupt. We can't do anything. Let's start a new party. I disagree with that, but I definitely understand where that's coming from, because what the Democratic Party did during the 2016 primary especially, and has been doing for a long time, has eroded the trust of progressives, greatly so.
Now, I mean, to that point, even when I was running for the DNC chair, I said that even if I were the chairman of the Democratic Party, in order to rebuild and to restructure, to rebrand, to regain the trust, to do all these things that is necessary to become a viable entity again, we would have to run in Republican primaries in those deep red states. And I said it then. I said it in, I believe, Houston and again in Chicago, that is the strategy that we need to take. And even though I have myself exited, it's solely to get elected. And what people don't realize is it's about platform. Why is Bernie Sanders the most popular politician in the country? He's an independent socialist from Vermont, right? He's some old guy, right, who's been doing this thing for the past 40 years.
But Sam, he's not even a Democrat, Sam.
He's not even a Democrat. That's
part of the appeal.
That's the point. That's why Republicans love him, and that's why Democrats, I mean, some Democrats love him as well, but a vast majority of independents as well. So to limit yourself to one party or the other is foolish. What you need to do is limit yourself to the values and the policies of the candidates. And that's what I think both of us agree with. And Jimmy Dore, Tim Black, I mean, a lot of these names, a lot of these independent news networks, a lot of these even candidates, that's what they're saying. Those who truly want reform, not just, a couple of sound bites on TV or in an interview.
Right.
We need to work together, and regardless of the party. And to the point of, is it a waste of time to infiltrate the Democratic Party? I think my experience, and I can only speak from my own experience, trying to infiltrate at the very, very top might be a waste of time.
Right.
But to try at the local level, the county level, infiltrate into your delegate system, to be a part of the local parties, especially in rural communities, especially in the South, especially in red populous states or districts, it is absolutely not a waste of your time. Because what you can do is build the brand that way. And again, if you utilize the strengths and the resources of infiltrating other primaries, you'll be able to share your platform and your message to people who would otherwise turn you down. That's the premise of the Our Voice app and candidate directory. It's just a platform with which candidates can put their information and share it across the country, but also tie it into a map so people could type in their address and find out, oh, who's near me? Same thing with the canvassing app. It's open to everybody, free to download, free to use, free to have access to. Go knock some doors and be like, hey, I represent somebody. Can I ask you a couple of questions, or can you just tell me what you feel about, the top 3 issues in the country right now? Boom, boom, boom. Now you have live poll data. And again, freely accessible. It's, well, A, free, B, significantly more accessible than NPG Van, which is controlled by the Democrats.
Right.
And Nation Builder, which is not controlled by any one party, but is extremely, extremely priced out of the realm of possibility for most people. $2,700 a month.
Wow.
$1,800 a month. I mean, don't get me wrong. In the grand scheme of things, for a $300,000 congressional campaign, that should be very minimal. But can you raise that $300,000? For the most part,
Right.
we're all grassroots. For the most part, we're all just regular people working a 9 to 5 and doing this and living a life and having friends and having a family and we chances are we're not going to get a $300,000 check from Goldman Sachs. You know what I'm saying? So
For sure.
we can't afford that $1,800 a month. We at large can't, right? You know, there are some of those progressive candidates out there who can, and kudos to them. Even to a greater or lesser degree, I can. But I found out too that the MPG bands, the nation builders, all these tools that are available, their data is either obsolete or useless. And by that, I mean, I have 200,000 phone numbers, 90% of which are no longer valid in my district. So I've had people phone banking. I have over 4,000 lists. I've had people phone banking, and they say that 80% of those, 80 to 90% of those phone numbers are disconnected or no longer viable. And I spent that $2,700. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
even spending that kind of money is no guarantee that you have useful information. Whereas with the app and the directory, that's user submitted. That's people like you and me going out for an hour in the cold, the rain, the whatever, and knocking on doors and having a conversation with people. So yeah, we can infiltrate, and we can use our own tools and resources, and then we can start affecting change.
Yeah, I remember talking about some of the Justice Democrats actually being blocked from being able to use those tools, either blocked from using the tools with all the, even as you said, whatever useful information was actually in there being taken out because they're an outsider. So this is a tool built by insiders for insiders.
Pretty
And
much.
so, I mean, that's one of the major problems because they don't want you to infiltrate. But as you point out, there are ways to get around that. All politics happens to be local. And it turns out that policy is far more important than just party.
Exactly. And to the point of all politics is local, you see all over the country people becoming delegates and becoming members of the executive board of their local parties, especially in blue states like Los Angeles, California and New York, specifically Los Angeles. But you know, that doesn't mean that other places like Oregon, Colorado, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, Mississippi, you can't get in on it. Plus, in those red states, like those really red states like Mississippi and Kentucky and, well, pretty much the South, the Democratic Party is so weak there regardless, you could probably get onto the state executive board. You could, as just a Joe, show up once or twice and actually affect change. I mean, when we talk about infiltration, we're thinking, oh, how are we going to infiltrate the Democratic strongholds that are California, New York, Massachusetts, Jersey, Washington? Yeah, that's a tough nut to crack. Like that. Good luck with that. But those other areas, that's how we can take over and win. See, we as a movement, as progressives, as just people wanting reform even, no labels needed, we aren't thinking long term. We are thinking we have to do it now, and it has to be this way, this way, this way, and that's just not how that works. Why is the Republican Party in control of 66% of all the government in the country, whether from local, county, state to federal? The Republican Party controls at least 2/3 of every elected position in the United States. Why is that? Because for 40 years, they focused on winning the elections over time, building their base, growing their message, just infiltrating until the point that they're dominant. So to dismiss the Republicans out of hand is foolish because they control everything.
Yeah.
But they're also so large that you could infiltrate and fall in under the radar, whereas the Democrats are so small, they're in a consolidation effort. They're turtling, so to speak.
Right.
And to try and pierce that shell is going to be much more difficult unless you're going into the weaker areas in the first place. It's about strategy. It's divide and conquer, infiltrate and consolidate.
Yeah. Like a lot of progressives like to talk about how, Republicans are stupid. Well, they've got some of the best strategists and some of the best strategy that I've ever seen, at least when it comes to getting control of state and local governments and then working their way up. And we've seen that. And now they have pretty much full control of all three branches of government. It's been a very long-term, very effective strategy. So you're right, progressives have actually got to start looking at the long game and the real strategy, and not just, and this is what I hate about it, a lot of our progressive strategy is that we always aim for the top, right? Yeah. Oh, if we win the presidency, well, then that'll work. Well, how did it work out with President Obama? It didn't really work out very well.
No,
how did it work out with control of Congress? Didn't work out very well because we've lost the local areas. And when when the criticism, and I think it's a valid criticism, comes in from both the right and the left, that the Democratic Party is the party of the elites, they're absolutely right.
Well, they're certainly not wrong. It can be argued that there's elitism on both sides, but that's the issue. The elitism is a problem, but how do you circumvent elites? Okay, the elite is implied, is indicative of a minority, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we like to talk about minorities in terms of demographics, but what is the true minority in this country? The wealthy, especially the powerful and wealthy. That's 1% of 1%. Okay, so you take that fraction of the population, and then you compare it to the voters, 270 million people who are eligible to vote in this country. 270 million people versus 0.1%, which would be what, a couple thousand, a few thousand? Mm-hmm. Few thousand versus a few million. Who wins? I mean, honestly, that's the problem, though. Because so few people control everything, to include messaging, it causes a disparity. Just an actual how could I possibly make a difference if I'm being told day in and day out, just minute after minute, story after story, that people do not have power? Wrong. Yes, there's a massive amount of corruption. Yes, elections can be rigged. And yes, money does play a significant role in all of those things being happening. However, if enough of us participate, it could overwhelm those systems that would try and undermine our democratic processes. And it's also going to be harder to lie when 270 million people all are like, no, we absolutely did not vote for this, and there's no freaking way that this could have been the case. I mean, collectively across the country, we did not vote for this, right?
Right.
And again, if nobody was a candidate, if nobody, to go back to the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? If Odysseus were running, right, nobody, he would have won. Because 46.9% of the election or of voters did not vote.
Right, nobody. And that goes back to your disparity, right? There's a disparity, and then there's just straight up despair, and that's what I talk about a lot. The average person, it doesn't get involved in politics because they think it's hopeless. They see a lot of evidence that backs up the idea that it's hopeless. And they they're too busy working 2 to 3 uniquely American jobs to be able to get involved. It is very complicated. The news tends to dumb things down and doesn't focus on important issues. And there's that day-to-day drama that they talk about, which they've got plenty with the president. And so there's a lot of different factors that feed into what you were saying, with so many people just not being involved. And then it leads to a situation where everybody's just throwing up their hands and goes, I don't know, like, that's it, but I don't care. But you should care, because this is the reason why we don't have universal health care. This is the reason why we don't have things that are incredibly popular among both Democrats and Republicans, or whatever labels, independents. This is the reason why we don't have these policies, and why the 1% or the 0.1% more like control most of everything at this point. We've just given up.
We have. And it's unfortunate because, I mean, look around the world. And I'm not saying Viva la Revolution, right? Guillotines for everybody. I'm not saying that, because it's not necessary. We aren't to the point where we need to rise up, revolt against our country, and burn it down to the ground in ashes, right? We're not there yet. Okay, but that's a key word, and I'll get back to that in a second. If you look at Iceland, the population of that country rose up, protested to such a massive degree that they caused their president to resign and then imprisoned him, or her, I don't remember if it was a her, I think it was a him, and then went and prosecuted the bankers who caused the global economic recession back in, 2012? Iceland did that. The population of Iceland did that. And now they have social medicines, social education, some of the best living conditions in the world, clean energy. I believe 80% of their energy resources is clean energy, high wages, high maternity leave, high personal vacation time as well. I mean, Iceland is arguably the epicenter of utopia for the world right now. And it's because the people revolted and said, no, we don't accept this. Now, again, I'm not saying we have to pick up pitchforks and torches and go marching down the road. Our protest could simply be showing up to the polls, right? It is that simple. And that's kind of the point that I've been trying to make, is if people took action, they would see results. And I don't think people see that. And I try and use myself as an example, not to elevate myself, but to show a proof of concept. Here's some guy who left active duty Air Force as an enlisted guy. And I mean, I turn wrenches. I'm a glorified mechanic, right? And I took it upon myself to learn the process, which, okay, fine, that took a little bit, and then applied what I learned, ran for the DNC chair, got my signatures, made it to the forums, granted on my own dime, and showed up and got them to listen. They didn't have much of a choice because I was there and so were they. But the point is, I did that. Some no-name 27-year-old from Ohio, enlisted airman, like not even an officer, right? Not even an educated guy, right? Got an associate's degree and a couple other credits. If I can do that, if I can get onto the national stage at the DNC and tell the, political elites that were sitting on that stage to their face in an articulate and calm manner what they're doing wrong, how they can fix it, and why it's going to work, so can you, right? Not everybody should be in positions of power. Not everybody is cut out to lead. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is anybody can participate because the process is designed to be inclusive. The Constitution wasn't designed to favor the elites. It was designed to favor the people. That's why we have those unalienable rights. That's why the Bill of Rights was thrown in there. And that's why we have, 27 amendments now? It's to empower people, not the government, and certainly not the wealthy or corporations.
Right.
So we have to start exercising our rights, specifically to vote. Again, 270 million people can vote in this country. If even a third did on a regular basis, we would be much better off. Granted, I'd prefer 70, 80, 90% of the people voting. But again, if only a quarter of the population votes and they're the ones that vote lockstep with the party, then you can't, expect anything else to change. But if that other 75% who does want change voted for change, it would happen. And this isn't Obama's hope and change, right? Because that failed dismally. I'm talking real change. I'm talking fighting for 15, fighting for universal health care, fighting for universal education and tuition debt forgiveness, fighting for clean energy, fighting for infrastructure. And I do mean the word fight. People say I'm too aggressive in my rhetoric and in my conversation. I'm sorry, but this is the time to be aggressive. This is a call to action. Protesting gets you so far, petitions gets you so far, unless you get people elected and unless you support those candidates or those organizations trying to achieve these goals, nothing changes. Going on Facebook, sharing this stream or this video, that only takes you so far. It's about getting people to be inspired by it. It's about getting people out there. It's about finding that 30 minutes in the week that you can spare to call up your friends, knock on doors, do whatever. Donate to a candidate, share that candidate's information, and really spread that word. It's about doing the work. And unfortunately, that's where we fail. Both parties, establishment and corrupt as they may be, are putting in the work. They are putting in overtime to control you, to make you feel like there's nothing that can be done, to make you feel inferior and to make you feel weak. That is their job, 24/7, 365, and they are being incredibly successful. Your job has to be to not allow that to happen. And the way we do that is to be active. And again, there are tools and resources available to make that happen. Our Voice Candidate Directory and Our Voice Canvassing app. I cannot emphasize it enough. These are free, user-created tools, user-developed tools designed to help the grassroots community for the grassroots community.
Well, one of the ideas, and I was reading through your platform that actually really fascinated me, and this is something that I've been talking about before, universal basic income. Mm-hmm. Really interesting idea. I actually love the idea. And I think it's something that could actually also appeal to Republicans. You're running as a Republican in Ohio, which is a very interesting tactic that I haven't seen before. But as you sort of alluded to earlier, it's less about party and more about policy and platform and what you're talking about. And when you go through the polls and some issues, a lot of issues, you can find Republican independent support as well as Democratic support. So, and just, regular people, you reach out to regular people, you ask them about, hey, should we all have health care? Do you feel like you're getting ripped off by your insurance company? Why, yes, sir, I do believe I am. Well, we've got the solution for you. Would you like Medicare? I like Medicare. My grandma's on Medicare. It sounds awesome. Why don't we open it up to everybody? And you just, you don't have to drop that, oh, it's a Democratic idea or it's a progressive idea or it's a conservative idea. It's just an idea. And it's an idea that works. I mean, you think of the conservative parties over in Europe, when you talk about the UK, when you talk about Norway, when you talk about, Iceland's system, they all run on single payer. They all have government-sponsored insurance. And sure, they operate it in some different ways. Sweden, for example, has a completely private system, but is not for profit. And that's the important thing. They've made sure that, yes, you can have private insurance companies, so you have all sorts of different choices, but they are non-profit agencies, so they're not allowed to make money off of you.
It's a crazy
those are
concept,
ideas,
right?
Yeah, those are ideas that people are like, hey, you know what? I feel like I'm getting screwed. Actually, I know I'm getting screwed. I look at my bill. You say you have an idea to solve that. Great, let's listen, and just leave the labels and crap out of it. So I think it's very interesting.
And it's true. And honestly, so I think you're right. We kind of do, especially if we're running out of time here. We kind of probably do need to do a follow up.
For sure.
But my experience really has been exactly what I said it would be. If I run as a Republican, people will listen to me in my district because it's gerrymandered red, and especially in this county, it's an 80-20 county. I mean, it doesn't really get worse than that, right? But being a Republican, I can talk about, hey, that Medicare for All thing, you're already paying for it in your taxes. It's not additional costs, and it's not something that's going to moochers. It's your money working for you. It's your tax dollars going towards something that's actually going to benefit you. And what I'm talking about, as candidate Ronan on your doorstep, is if we did universal health care and education, it would be your tax dollars going right back to you as part of the collective good of being in a country, right? Like that's what taxes are supposed to do, is benefit everybody. That's the point of it, right? Roads benefit everybody, electricity benefits everybody, water benefits everybody, right? So we're just adding to it Medicare or healthcare and education. Now you mentioned universal basic income, and it's funny because when I first came up with universal, let me rephrase. I didn't come up with the idea. I meant when I was looking at the numbers, I didn't know what it was called at the time. I was just like, hey, if we paid people a stipend, much like the military gives you housing and food allowance, it'd be tax-free, it would go right back into the economy significantly better than any of the other welfare. And when I looked at it as simply a calculation, it just makes sense. Right now, welfare in this country is predominantly on the burden of states. And that's something I wasn't aware of at first. I thought it was predominantly from the federal government, not just because of media. I just thought that's where it came from, but it actually comes from the states. So what you'd be doing with the universal health or universal basic income, instead of having the welfare as it currently stands, you'd be saving states significant, I mean copious sums of money. And even if you do the standard, what I came up with was a $1,500 monthly stipend, which is equivalent to the BAH and the BAS of a staff sergeant in the United States Air Force. $1,500 to everybody instead of welfare. Well, $1,500 a month is really, I think about $18,000. Check my math. It's between 17.5 and 18.5. I just can't remember right now. And so essentially minimum wage. So it's essentially getting minimum wage for being an American citizen, 18 years or older. And then that would be supplementing whatever you're making anyway. Instead of getting food stamps and housing allowance and the Obama phone and blah, 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 right? Because in most states, welfare amounts to $70,000 a year, $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year, right? $35,000 a year. What happens, though, is even despite all that benefit, this is where the conservative argument comes into play. It doesn't encourage people to go back into the workforce because it's not dependent on that. Now, progressivism, liberalism, all that aside, I do think if you're going to get welfare, it should be a step up. It should be something to help you get back into the swing of things. The way it's designed right now, though, that's not the case. What universal basic income does, it gives you a blanket, $15 a month that you can snort up your nose, pour down your gullet with booze, or you can be intelligent and put it towards a house or to bills, towards food or whatever like it's supposed to be. What it does, though, is take the responsibility out of the hands of the state and the government and puts it into the hands of the people, right? Which, if people are smart and they continue to hurt themselves, that's all they get. There is no more welfare. That's it. You get universal basic income. If you squander it, that's on you. Well, what about homelessness? What about this, that, and the other? Well, that goes into a different part of the discussion. We're just talking about the dollars and cents. You would save trillions of dollars, well, at least billions of dollars, by switching to universal basic income, taking welfare out of the equation, and giving every 18-year-old in this country and older $1,500 a month to supplement their living expenses. Now, with welfare in general, how does that help for everybody else? Well, one of the other policy things is the state, what is a government? Let's have that conversation. Okay. What is the point of government? It's to be just an organization. It's to be that sense of community, a collective community that provides certain things that as citizens we could not provide for ourselves. Safety, security, resources, right? And resources can also mean food, water, and energy, healthcare, education, right? I can provide myself an education now thanks to the internet. And to a greater or lesser degree, most people do. But if I want a job, I need a degree, right? Because that's the institution. So that degree needs to be accessible to people so that they can participate in that process, right? So going back to homelessness, yes. Are there people who have brought it upon themselves and refuse to help themselves? Yes. And I have heard far too many stories for it to just be a statistic or a cliche. There are too many homeless people in this country right now who truly do abuse the system. That is a fact. It's an unfortunate fact. But there are significantly many more, especially veterans, and I cannot stress that enough. If you're homeless, that's bad enough. If you're a veteran and you're homeless, that is a complete waste. That is just, nothing is more tragic than a skilled hero who served their country being ignored and left to suffer on their own. A lot of these homeless veterans suffer from PTSD, and that is the sole reason why they're homeless, because they can't cope in the regular world, because they've seen combat, or because they've had friends die, or because what have you, right? I've lost friends. I have lost friends to PTSD, okay? And what that implies. Active duty that did not make it past their battles.
Right.
Okay? So when I see and hear about veterans on the street, if you are a veteran, that means you made it through basic training. You made it through, the Air Force calls it tech school. I think the Marines and the Army calls it AIT. You have a skill, whether it's combat or something civilian related, right? Whether you were infantry, mech infantry, gunner, howitzer operator. I'm in the Air Force, so we have different job
artillery
sets,
or something, artillery specialist, or I don't even know. So that makes sense.
Right. I mean, even if you have your spec ops guys, right? Anyway, even if your primary job is combat related, that is still translatable into the real world because you have experience. You, at the very least, can work with a team, you've been in a diverse society, you're familiar with moving around, and you can deal with stress, major stress. Mm-hmm. Now, sure, PTSD, that is a mental condition. That's not something that means you can handle stress. It means you have seen things that have traumatized your psyche. And I'm sorry, I would like to think that if I was in a combat zone and I saw somebody blown to bits, I could walk away from that. Chances are I wouldn't be able to. Chances are you wouldn't be able to. Chances are nobody in this planet could. And furthermore, should. If you can see your best friend get their head blown off, or a child gunned down in front of you, or somebody burned alive, that had damn well better traumatize you. Otherwise, there's a bigger problem at stake, right? So for our veterans to suffer because they have seen and went through these traumatic experiences, when they have skills, when they have capabilities far beyond, and again, I'm not trying to just raise military as superior to civilians in general. I don't mean it that way. What I'm saying is these people have possibilities. They have significantly more potential because they've been there and they have done that, and we are failing them. We are failing them by not helping them. So we need to have
I would say,
process in place to lift them back up.
Right,
and I would say for regular homelessness.
Absolutely, I would say we failed them in a couple of different ways. For one, I mean, sending them off to resource wars for corporations, for oil and stuff like that. That's the number one way that we failed them, and then we failed them when they come home. After going and securing those resources for our multinational corporations, we then deny them health care. We now, deny them the mental health care that they need to deal with the PTSD and deny them the resources that they need to build those and to retransition into civilian life. So there's a lot of different ways that we have failed our military veterans and, people that join up. And so, that's something that we definitely need to work on as a country, as a nation.
And as a government, I mean, as government in general, that's the point of it, to be a fail-safe, to be that support structure. And to go back to the homelessness just for 2 seconds, that's what I would like, is a rehabilitation program that, fine, even if you're homeless and you don't want to get back to work, we're going to work with you to get you back on your feet. Or at the very least, and I don't know how to phrase this without it sounding a certain way, but to have you off the street by being in a homeless community. I think if we can get homeless folks off the streets, just literally off the streets, off of the highways, and just in their own communities where they can be at least safe from the elements, right? Fine, we're not going to give them free food. We're not going to do all this other stuff because, okay, you're choosing this life. But the tools and resources to improve your life will always be readily available. Medical care will be readily available, right? There will be, the Doctors Without Borders or something?
Doctors Without Borders, yeah.
Yeah, like that could be part of the tool that's like, all right, we'll make sure everybody's healthy. We'll make sure that they're not, flooding emergency rooms needlessly or whatever, right? And the last thing we don't want to do is to just put homeless people into prisons, right? Because anymore, you get 3 hots on a cot and 4 walls and a roof over your head. That's prison nowadays. That's our homeless solution, and that's also our
mental health solution too.
It's a lot of our solution we there's a lot that we can talk about.
A lot of problems.
But suffice to say, we need to do as much as we can without going overboard with it, right? Because right now, we're at the pendulum where we're doing too much, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We're basically opening its mouth and forcing the water down its mouth too. You know what I'm saying? We as government should never be doing that, right? We as a country, as a civilization, as people should never have to force prosperity on people, right? Or solutions to problems, right? They should just be available. And if people choose not to use it or they squander their resources, that's on them. There are dregs to society. There are weak links. And that's just an unfortunate reality. It's just like when somebody asked me, well, do you believe that our country is a Christian nation? And I'm like, no, I don't. And even if I did, that wouldn't be my purpose. The purview of me as a legislator is to pass legislation that aren't biblical, that aren't Jewish, that aren't Islamic, that aren't Hindu, that aren't Buddhist, but laws that'll benefit this country, period, no matter what my belief is, right?
Mm-hmm.
My dog tags say Roman Catholic. They could just as easily say Buddhist, Hindu, Islam, Jewish, whatever, right? It could say any of those things, and I would say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
My faith, my values, my spiritual well-being is for me. It is not what legislation should be about. And I think people realize that more and more. And the same thing as a country. A government should provide opportunity and ensure that there is no abuse occurring, be it from the top or the bottom. It needs to be the balance of the scales. It's up to people to take advantage of those opportunities and those resources. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Going back to where we started here with the universal basic income, right? The reason that I talk about it is because right now we have automation, right? So that's something that's big, right? Automation is coming whether we like it or not. In fact, it's almost already here, and we're on the cusp of having a lot of low-wage jobs eliminated, right? And so I think we would do better with the universal basic income than anything else, because what we're doing is that we're creating a permanent underclass if we don't.
Right.
And so, but these are people that actually do want to help themselves. They actually do want to, try to build a life for themselves, because I think that's what most people want, is to have a life where they're comfortable, right? So where they can afford food, water, have clean water, have, some fun stuff every once in a while, but have a roof over their head and, not have to worry so much about how we're going to pay for healthcare, how we're going to pay for education, how am I going to move up in the world, how are we going to move forward or have a good family and just attain that lofty ideal of happiness. And too many people are unable to do that in today's society.
I agree. And excuse me. Part of where I think you're going with that is we have two problems. First,
we have a lot of problems.
Well, two primary problems, I think, is what that boils down to with people not being able to improve, and then the jobs and automation, the technology sourcing people out of work. So I was born in '89. I was raised in the '90s to believe that college and university and bachelor's this, master's that, PhD this, right? Mm-hmm. That was the promise I was given, and I believe we're in the same generation. I know a lot of my friends, family, cousins, nieces, all that good stuff. We were all promised this. The entire millennial generation were promised.
I remember.
Yeah, this opportunity, this grandiose, if you do X, Y, and Z, if you go to high school and you get your 3.6 GPA and you get into a not state college and you get your degree, you're set for life. And what have we seen? An entire generation burdened with college loan debt, right? And an oversaturation of skilled jobs. And by that, I mean degreed jobs. What we're lacking, however, is significantly lacking all across the country is skilled labor jobs. So I work at Tool Testing Lab as an electronics technician. Basically, I calibrate test, measurement, and diagnostic equipment that's used in various fields between avionics, maintenance, healthcare, whatever. For instance, well, here we go. So like a bottle of water, right? This has a volume, a mass, and if you pour it out, there's a certain viscosity. I make sure that it has all those dimensions correctly, right? Okay. Just to put it simply.
Okay.
Point being, there's a lot of people that need to be doing that job that aren't, right? There's a lot of job openings for that job. There's a lot of job openings for electricians, plumbers,
welders,
construction workers, all these other skilled jobs that you need education for, a certification, an apprenticeship, sure. But it's significantly cheaper. It's significantly more accessible. And automation can't necessarily replace it until we actually have androids. I'm not saying that to be silly or talk about science fiction. I mean, honestly, there's only so much automation can do. You can't put in a wire in a house automatically just yet. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
But eventually, we're going to have to shift into robotics, into programming, AI, blah, blah, blah. But for now, there's plenty of skilled labor positions that are just in desperate need of people. And they pay good money, $20, $25, $30, $35, $40 an hour starting out. My brother is an apprentice electrician. He is 20 years old, right? 20 years old, an electrician's apprentice. He's making, I think, $15 an hour. Not bad, right?
Not bad.
When he works on a state job, however, a state job, as in the state of Ohio pays his company to do something, he gets sent over there, $30 an hour, plus overtime if he works overtime, which he usually does.
Mm-hmm.
$30 an hour at 20 years old. Who here can say that? I'm 28 years old and I have never made $30 an hour. Okay? That's where our jobs are, and that's where the money is, and that's how you can achieve the American dream. But we have been told and browbeaten that it's just a bunch of knuckle draggers that go there, right? What's the most common phrase? A monkey with a wrench, right? That's what we call mechanics. Not true. A lot of mechanics, fine, the little mom and pop, mechanics, they maybe get, $15 an hour. It's their son, their nephew, their whatever, ex-convict trying to do good again. Cool. But if you're working on BMW, Volkswagen, Audi, Maserati, Lamborghini, Ferrari, let me tell you how much money you're going to make working on one of those cars, right? But you got to go through the steps. You got to get your certifications, your accreditations, your credentials, right? Same thing with trucking, right? It's trucking. You are literally driving a big old truck from point A to point B, unloading it, loading it back up with something else, and driving it from point B to point A. That's your job. But it's a CDL. It's a certificate. It's like,
right.
Well, I don't know how long it takes to get, but I think it's only a few weeks or maybe a couple months. And then you get 50 cents a mile. Now, legally, you're not supposed to drive more than 500 miles. What's 500 times a half? $250 a day. That's over $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And and that would be about an 8-hour shift. So, do the math. 250 divided by 8, you're getting some decent change right there, right?
Right.
That's where the economy is. That's how you can get involved. And people, there isn't enough promotion of that. And what I would like to do is have school-to-work programs where the schools and the employees or the employers talk to each other, communicate, cross-communicate, so that what's being taught is what the industry requires. And that if you can't get a job out of school despite all that, that's where the state comes in and it's like, look, this is your skill set, this is your credential, this is where your skills are needed the most, and then with a rack and stack of likelihood of getting employed, wages, blah, blah, blah. But also locations. Like, I get it. You grew up in Springboro, but the job is here in Lancaster, Ohio. We will help you move to Lancaster, Ohio to get your job. Mm-hmm. And if you take them up on it, great. If you don't, that's on you. Mm-hmm. Again, bringing horses to water. And if we had that alone, just that by itself, that school-to-work program and a job placement system to help people find jobs,
right?
That, I think, would solve a lot of our problems. Now, back to the automation. Unskilled labor, your cashiers, your stockers, your cart pushers, baggers, what have you, right? Just your regular, quote-unquote first job, right? Yeah. I mean, I was a sandwich artist for Subway. I was a cart pusher for Kmart. I even did door-to-door sales, right? This is not those aren't things that require skill. That's like a day or two worth of, here's how to punch buttons and here's how to make the sandwich, right? Or here's how to push carts, don't break yourself. Those aren't jobs that should be sustaining an economy. Those jobs should be paying minimum wage, and maybe not much more than that. But that doesn't mean minimum wage needs to be $7 an hour, $7.58, right, whatever it is, right? It still should be a livable wage. It should just be the lowest tier of livable wage, right? Whatever that may be. Those are the jobs that are being automated, and rightfully so. That is the low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. Again, we can't automate building a house, right? You can't do that. We don't have that technology yet. And at the rate we're going, we're probably not either. But that's a different discussion. With the automation, though, and with all these unskilled labor positions going to the wayside, we need to incentivize the program and to go into those skilled labor positions, right? To take those opportunities. Mm-hmm. But universal basic income also helps supplement. If you need work experience, and we're in that kind of gray area of an older generation that pulls yourself up by the bootstraps and a younger generation that wants to give you a chance, trying to find that happy medium, it's difficult to get started, right? Even with your degree, there's far too many bachelor's degrees flipping burgers, right? That's a waste. That is an absolute waste to have a bachelor's degree flipping burgers. And I'm not saying that they're superior. I'm saying they have a skill and a resource that we are squandering. Like, just from a straight up human resources perspective.
Right.
Why would you put a bachelor's degree holder to flip burgers? That just doesn't make any sense, right? And I get it. There's a little bit of arrogance on the degree holder side too, but if they've already lowered themselves to working for McDonald's, then they shouldn't be holding out for that 7-figure paycheck at frickin' name a wealthy corporation, right?
Right.
But at the same time, there should be more opportunity for them to get that job. I mean, okay, so say you have an aerospace engineering degree, right? Pretty big, heavy stuff, right?
Right.
You can be a mechanic. That is a translatable skill. You might even be a better mechanic because you actually know how the damn thing works. You could probably build one, so you can sure as hell fix it. Same thing with business management. Okay, fine. That's probably the most generic degree as well, the business degree.
Mm-hmm.
But that tells you that A, you have an economic and financial understanding,
Mm-hmm.
you have a human resources understanding, an administrative understanding, and you have a management and logistics understanding. That's the requirements for that job. So you should be able to get jobs as a logistician, as a manager, as an administrative, whatever. Those are also translatable, degrees. And what I think is lost is that people don't understand that. People don't know that their 4-year degree is something else. And I was the same way.
Yeah, and look, not everybody is like who goes to college, by the way. And this is the other big problem, is not everybody who goes to school was meant to go to school. There are
Correct.
people who are just better with their hands. I am not. So like, I worked in manufacturing, and I was not exactly great with a wrench. Let's be honest. I'm much better at talking. Who knew?
Right.
Who knew that would be a marketable skill? So like, I know where my strengths are, and I know where my weaknesses are. A lot of people are opposite. There are people that could, that run circles around me with a wrench and can fix anything. I know I was up for example, a maintenance position. I didn't get it because the person that was with me or competing against me was far, far better at it. And I was like, hey, the guy deserves it. He's so much better at doing this. So there are people who definitely belong in the skilled trades. And why should we push them towards a 4-year degree that, as you keep putting it, is kind of squandering their natural talents? And so that's sort of the problem. And you're right. This push for millennials, we have been, people that don't belong in school have been herded into school because, well, that's the only way to get ahead. That's the big lie. It's the only way to get ahead. It's the only way to get ahead. Because these other jobs, some of these skilled trades, and you pointed out that whole perception is wrong, but a lot of people thought, well, you don't get paid anything doing that. Whereas you get paid more being a doctor or a lawyer or a person or a network engineer, or, well, not engineer, but like a network administrator and stuff like that. So, we should go for those jobs, those that require a degree instead of going into skilled trades. I know people, I have family members that teach classes in welding, and they say, well, there's just not enough people. There's not enough people that are interested in doing this. There's not enough interest in the skilled trades. And I think, no, skilled trades are the basis, the backbone of an economy. You need those people to build things. Like, last time I welded, I set myself on fire, so I can't do that. Like, I can't hand weld worth a day. But an interesting example, too, there is of automation, going back to that for a second. The same place that I worked at, who had hand welders, also had welding machines. There are just things that machines can't weld. There are just things that machines can't exactly do, where you're going to need people. And those people where I worked got paid a lot more than I did as a robotic, as somebody who just runs a machine. So, you put the parts on there, you run your finger through the button, and then it goes.
Right.
Far less skilled. And obviously I get paid far less than a person who was far more skilled, and that makes sense.
Well, and that brings up the other point that I didn't quite get to making, because thank you for bringing me back. The competition, right?
Right.
Employers should be competing for us, not the other way around. Right now, we're in an economy where actually it's kind of like the stock market. We were at a high, right? Buy. And then it just became sell, sell, sell. And what we're doing is trying to race the thing to the bottom, right? Yeah. And that's how we're competing. We started off at the top. Oh, I got my degree, so I'm going to compete for that. It's like, all right, fine. I'm not going to make my 6 figures, so let me do middle management. And then that wasn't available. So, oh, crap. Well, I need money. Otherwise, I'm screwed.
Right.
So now we're all competing for that unskilled job because we don't know how to market ourselves to the other side. So what we have is an economy that's based around competition for the bottom line versus a competition for getting the best qualified and the best capable people, or to place those folks into those positions that they're needed. And that's the point. I shouldn't be getting paid more than somebody who's skilled at something, right? If I'm just a fry cook, I shouldn't be getting paid more than the shift manager, because the shift manager is filling in for the other fry cooks. They're managing the numbers, the logistics, the whatever, right? Likewise with you, you're pushing a button, they're welding. You shouldn't be getting paid as much as the welder. The meme that makes me so angry is that burger flippers are demanding $15 an hour, which is the payment of a paramedic. Like, I'm sorry, but a paramedic is worth way more than $15
an hour.
That's the point.
Yes.
We've been competing for a job to the point where it even drove down the wages. It's like, okay, I need a job as a paramedic. I am willing to do it for $15. It's like, no, I'm only going to do it for $16. Well, guess what? I didn't get the job, but this guy did. And now we went from a $30 an hour to $15 an hour, and it's ridiculous. That's the problem, is that we are competing for a spiral of the bottom instead of competing for a spiral to the top.
Yeah, it's a race to the bottom.
Right. And until that changes, or until we've hit rock bottom, as the case may be, or until there's people in power, and I do say power and authority, to change that so that we artificially hit bottom and like, okay, guys, we're good. Let's start doing it the right way.
Let's go back up.
Then our economy improves. And until that happens, we're going to see more poverty, more disparity, more bankruptcies, more suffering in the economy. And quite frankly, living off of the economy, as I am, is terrifying to me, all right? And I'm not saying that because the military is all this great and whatever, because I can still be sent off to war and die, right? I still have to exercise, and I hate exercising. I have to wake up at ungodly early hours and then go to work with a smile, right? However, it is applied socialism. Like, there's no other way to describe it. You have free education, free healthcare, free resources for financial investment, I mean, literally, you name it, the military provides it to you,
right,
if you're active duty. On top of that, you get a monthly stipend to cover your housing and food costs, period. That is the utopia, whatever. The difference is people are being driven to the military and enlisting and commissioning simply because they have no other options in the real world.
Right.
The civilian world. And it's degrading my military. And I say my military because a lot of these, almost got carried away there. A lot of these people who are enlisting don't give a damn about their country, do not give a damn about the military, do not actually want to serve their country. They're doing it for a paycheck. And those people have no business being in the military, just like I have no business turning a wrench on a car, right? I've even electrocuted myself, doing test equipment, for crying out loud, right? I'm also not very mechanically savvy, but I am good with electronics, so go figure, right?
Right.
Point being, I didn't join the military because I wanted a paycheck or a free education. I didn't want to do my 4 years and bounce. I joined the military because I wanted to do my 20 plus years and serve my country and be a 4th, 5th, 6th generation military member.
Right.
Right? These people are 1st generation, 4-year, 6-year enlistees, 4 to 8 year commissionees, so they can get their student loans paid off or have a GI Bill stepping out.
Right.
They're the ones degrading our military, and it's problematic and indicative of a failing economy. If you're driven to the military as a fail-safe rather than your first purpose, that should tell you everything you need to know. And if employers don't have to compete to earn your employment, right? Crazy sounding statement right there. But if they're not competing for you, then they are using you. and they are working you to death, and they are discarding you. You aren't valued to them. You're just a statistic. You're just a number, a
cog in the machine.
off. And until that changes, I mean, actually, not even until, that is what has to change.
Right.
Universal basic income helps supplement it. You know, school to work programs help supplement it. Job placement helps supplement it. All these things could help our economy bounce back, but we have to get people, A, involved, B, willing to run, and then C, elected.
And yeah, absolutely. So this has been a great discussion. I could sit here and talk about this stuff for hours.
This is awesome.
So I really enjoyed it. We're gonna have to have you back. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, Sam. So, all right, you're running in Ohio, 1st Congressional District, right? So how can people help with your campaign?
Awesome. So the website is www.ronanforcongress.com. And if you go to the tabs, there's a donate button and a volunteer button or tab. And either one of those is going to be incredibly helpful, right?
Okay.
We need money and we need volunteers. Primarily, we need volunteers for writing, social media, phone banking. And if you're in Ohio, specifically in the Cincinnati area or Warren County area, we also need canvassers, so people to knock on doors. We also have the opportunity for internships. So even if you're in California, Nevada, New York, Massachusetts, and you can only help remotely, I can, and the campaign can, support you with an internship and doing whatever I just mentioned as well. Mm-hmm. You can also find me on social media, on Twitter, @Ronan4Progress, on Facebook, Ronan FOR Congress, and I believe I have an Instagram, The Real Sam Ronan. And other than that, just liking and sharing, that is enough. That certainly helps get the message out there. Promoting it to your friends and family, just getting the word out that there is a guy in Ohio trying to make a difference. Again, the website, www.ronanforcongress.com. Hit that donate button, hit that volunteer button. This is a big tent campaign, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So I look forward to your help, and I look forward to your guys' support, and you and I will have to certainly do this again.
Absolutely. So everybody check out those different places to help Sam. Sam, again, thank you so much for coming on the show, doing an interview. Again, we'll have to talk about some more issues because it was definitely a great conversation. So thank you so much.
Awesome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYT Nation.